Well, good afternoon, Deputy Speaker. Deputy Speaker, I will be supporting the government's bill, and in fact I'll also be supporting the opposition's amendment. Now I want to make something perfectly clear before I speak on, and that is that what I've got to say this afternoon has nothing to do with the Centrelink staff. In fact, I think our officers in Centrelink and in the department more broadly, they do a good job. They do as good a job as they humanly can do in very difficult circumstances. And in fact, at times like, for example, the robo-debt fiasco, it was Centrelink officers who often were the source of information to inform the community, to inform us members of parliament about the problems with the scheme. And I, in fact, approached the Commonwealth Ombudsman on a number of occasions, passing on a number of concerns. And many of those concerns were, in fact, informed by Centrelink whistleblowers. So my comments this afternoon should not be in any way taken to be a criticism of the staff. Rather, they are in support of the staff, because the staff in the department, and in particular in Centrelink, they are labouring through very difficult circumstances. They're understaffed, they're under-resourced, underfunded. They are having to be party to what I think is a reckless haste to go online. They have to implement policies and procedures and laws created by politicians, which often, in fact, go to demonise Centrelink recipients. Of course, the Labor amendment, or the opposition amendment, I think is well founded here, because so many of these problems actually do go to outsourcing. No wonder the federal government is wanting to change the name of the department from the Department of Human Services to Service Australia, because the government wants to take human out of the equation. Far too often it is about some poor Centrelink client unfortunate Centrelink client having to deal with a computer or a telephone or an ad in the paper or a nasty letter co-branded with an AFP badge. Deputy Speaker, the 10 years I've had this job, and in particular since the election of the Abbott government in 2013, I have dealt with countless, certainly hundreds, it might even be probably thousands now, of members of the community, particularly from the Denison and now Clark electorate, but in fact from right around Australia, who have had just terrible problems dealing with the government agencies, and with Centrelink in particular. If I could just recount perhaps some of the sorts of things that have been brought to my attention over the years. One of the big issues is a lack of communications. In fact, I would say that is probably the biggest frustration experienced by Centrelink customers. Here are some examples, like hours and hours waiting on the phone. Now, Centrelink says that there's only a 20-minute wait to get onto Centrelink, but that's if you can actually join the queue. Because often the line is just engaged, or the line goes dead after being waiting a certain period of time. So it may well be that the people that actually get through to Centrelink might only wait 20 minutes in many cases, but a lot of people, I think from time to time throughout the year, often the majority of people can't get onto the queue in the first place. There's also the issue about Centrelink clients waiting months for the outcome of their application. For example, people call or go into Centrelink to follow up and are just told there is a backlog and to keep waiting without being given any further information or time frame about their application. There's also the issue, Deputy Speaker, of the complicated and nonsensical forms and online applications that need to be filled out if you are going to attempt to deal with Centrelink. Indeed, I've had countless people approach me who thought they had submitted an application or uploaded the correct document, when in fact they hadn't, often resulting in them not being back paid or no longer able to appeal because the time had expired in which they might have appealed some judgment. I tell you what comes up quite a lot, Deputy Speaker, is losing. Now, how on earth a federal government department or agency can so consistently lose client documents, it beggars belief. Now, I'll make the point again, Deputy Speaker. This isn't about incompetence by Centrelink staff. This is about Centrelink staff who are really under the pump, under-resourced, who are doing the best they can, but with archaic systems that simply don't work. There's also the issue of random text messages or emails that are automatic and look like spam, which some people receive from time to time. Well, just this week I had an email from someone whose niece had become so distressed by a text message from Centrelink saying her payment was cut that it put her in hospital due to a serious panic attack. That is a true story, Deputy Speaker. And when Centrelink was contacted, no one could explain why the text was even sent in the first place. Deputy Speaker, there's also this use of template letters that are automatically generated and don't make sense or provide any detail. And then there's the appeal process. But how can a person appeal a decision when they don't even know the reason for that decision? Having something complicated verbally explained on the phone is simply not good enough. But how do you appeal? I've had countless people who thought they had appealed because they had lodged a document outlining their appeal, but then subsequently found out, or they found out, that it was just sitting on their file. Deputy Speaker, there are so many problems with communication from Centrelink, which almost always go back to an under-resourced agency, not enough people, archaic systems, too much of a haste to go online, and sometimes there's even a cultural problem where some people just, they don't want to help these people, but fortunately that's very, very rare. Deputy Speaker, this doesn't affect just any one particular payment among clients. I've had people come to me with problems with the age pension, with youth allowance, with the disability support pension, with job seeker, or the previous unemployment benefit. There is clearly a systemic problem. It isn't a problem with just one part of Centrelink or with the department. It's a systemic problem affecting all payments. The age pension is a particular problem. It's one of the big issues. Frankly, for many age pensioners, dealing with Centrelink is just simply too difficult. It's too hard to navigate. When they go into an office for assistance, these older Australians are just referred to online and phone services. So many people wait months for an outcome of their application, receive no communication at all from Centrelink during that time. Moreover, there are other problems with the system, with what goes on, not just customer service. I mean, the deeming rate's wrong, the assets tests and the assets assessments are poorly done. With the youth allowance, I've encountered a commonplace problem where the delays go to ridiculous lengths of time, so much so that I've had parents, schools and universities contact my office quite regularly, alarmingly regularly, because students just haven't been paid their youth allowance and they're destitute, and the parents are unable to afford paying their child's rent, food and other expenses. I've even heard of some students having to drop out of their learning because they had to work to earn money to eat, or they had to return home away from their learning institution. The disability support pension. I've had countless vulnerable people, terminally ill, permanently disabled, chronically ill people suffering from extreme mental health problems contact my office because their application for the DSP has been rejected. And they've been rejected because the medical evidence was deemed insufficient, and yet they are now on a 2-year wait list to see that specialist again. Or they were rejected getting a DSP because an independent medical assessor over the phone disagreed with the information provided by their medical specialist, or they were rejected because their condition was getting worse and so could not be classified as stabilised. As a result, Deputy Speaker, people are forced to drag themselves into Centrelink again and again. People with serious illness, mental illness, people with serious physical disabilities, but they're having to drag themselves into the Centrelink office time and time again, drag themselves to see multiple specialists when it is abundantly clear that that sort of treatment is unwarranted and they need the disability support pension and they need it quickly. And where do I begin with job seeker? One of the main problems here, well, one of the significant problems here, apart from the paltry amount that it used to be at $40 a day, and let's hope it never goes back to $40 a day, is that too often there is an attitude from government that people who are on the dole are bludgers. And, the government then creates all of these absurd hurdles for someone who is on unemployment benefits. And they will cut their payments in half. The agency will cut their payments in half if a compulsory meeting is missed due to sickness or other valid reasons. Deputy Speaker, I talked in my opening remarks about demonising, and I'm not talking about Centrelink officers demonising Centrelink clients. I'm talking about the government demonising Centrelink clients. And there is no better example of how that demonising manifests itself than in the robo-debt fiasco. Thank God that the courts will hold to account the government for the robo-debt fiasco. But please, Deputy Speaker, understand, and to my colleagues, please understand, it's not over. And in fact, just today I sent another letter of the Commonwealth Ombudsman bringing a number of issues to the attention of the Ombudsman because the government's decision to only repay debts calculated either wholly or partially on averaged ATO income data ignores the flawed and inconsistent internal processes that were applied to recalculating appealed robo-debts. So just today I've sent another piece of correspondence to the Ombudsman asking the Ombudsman to conduct another inquiry. I've lost counts of the number of times I've approached the Ombudsman over robo-debt, and I'm proud to say that it might have helped in some small way to encourage the Ombudsman to investigate these matters, to intervene and to be part of the process of holding the government to account. Deputy Speaker, much has already been said about outsourcing, and in fact just yesterday I gave a 90-second statement about outsourcing, and I've been pleased to see the opposition today picking up on the points I raised yesterday and going into even more detail in the extra time they've had. The figures I mentioned yesterday, I'll mention them again, Deputy Speaker. And I'm talking about the public service broadly here, not just about any one department or agency. And I refer to the work done by Michael West and publicised on michaelwest.com, which show that outsourced staff in the Department of Defence is 1.5 times the number of public servants in that department. The Attorney-General's Department spent $13.4 million on labour hire contractors last financial year. Home Affairs outsourced 1,082 positions, including intelligence analysts, legal practitioners and border enforcement officers. Nearly 40% of the Department of Infrastructure staff is outsourced, including 16 assistant directors. I'll say that again, Deputy Speaker. Nearly 40% of the Department of Infrastructure staff is outsourced, including 16 assistant directors. And 5,000 positions in the ATO's call centres are outsourced. This is just madness, Deputy Speaker. No wonder the standard of service by the government to the people it's supposed to serve is just so bad. No wonder Parliament, and this would go for government members of Parliament as well, I'm sure, are approached by people every single day with legitimate concerns about the problems they've experienced at the hands of the government's agencies. And these bottlenecks, these roadblocks they're running into because of not enough staff, hasty move to online processing of services, basically under-resourced and over-outsourced agencies. Deputy Speaker, all of this is simply not good enough. Simply not good enough. And it can be so easily turned around, but it will only turn around when the federal government acknowledges there's a problem. And when you've got ministers, just dismissing issues and problems with, my bad, and then, you tick the box, you sort of acknowledge some problem and then moved on, it leaves the community with no confidence whatsoever, none at all, that the government really appreciates there's a problem and really understands that it's in the public interest to fix those things. So please, Deputy Speaker, whether it be Centrelink or a number of other government agencies, let's resource these public servants properly so they can deliver a public service. Let's stop cutting the jobs. Let's stop outsourcing. Let's upgrade our systems and let there be leadership from the very top from the government. The government itself saying, we are here to serve. And we serve by having the very best agencies we can possibly have. We can't have the best agencies in the world compared to any other country. But it will need to start with an acknowledgement of the problem. It will need to be followed up with serious funding of these agencies. And let's stop demonising people who rely on the government. Let's face it, the people who walk into Centrelink are some of the most disadvantaged people in the country. They should be the people we pull close embrace and look after as well as we humanly can. That's our job. That's what the government's got to start understanding. The government has got to start doing its job. Let's resource these agencies. Let's stop the outsourcing. Thank you, Deputy Speaker.
I thank the member for Clark.